Commander Vax Thorax of the Zylaxian Empire stood at the bridge of his warship, the Crimson Scythe, watching the stars streak by through the observation window. His 4 secondary eyes blinked in sequence while his main visual receptor remained fixed on the tactical display. Another routine patrol in this backwater sector, how utterly boring. Supreme Commander Lieutenant Krell interrupted his thoughts, mandibles clicking with excitement. The scout ships have detected an unusual vessel in Quadrant 7. Vax turned all 5 eyes toward his subordinate. Unusual, how, he asked, voice rumbling like distant thunder. It appears to be primitive, sir, pre-warp capabilities, but its design matches no known species in our database. Now that was interesting. Vax's crystalline exoskeleton shifted colors slightly, reflecting his growing curiosity. Show me. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a small transport vessel that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. Compared to the sleek, biomechanical design of Zylaxian ships, it resembled a child's art project. Life signs, Vax inquired, already calculating the potential value of this discovery. 1 occupant, sir. Bipedal, carbon-based preliminary scans suggest it's from a newly spacefaring race called humans. Vax let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a growl. Humans? Never heard of them. Bring the vessel in carefully. I want to see this specimen myself. The tractor beam made short work of the tiny ship, drawing it into the massive hangar bay of the Crimson Scythe. Vax took his time walking down, letting anticipation build among his crew. As Supreme Commander, it was important to maintain an air of theatrical dignity, something his species had perfected over millennia of galactic conquest. When he finally arrived, his troops had already secured the vessel and extracted its occupant. The human stood between 2 armed guards, looking remarkably calm for a primitive being who'd just been captured by the galaxy's most feared warrior race. Well, Vax rumbled, towering over the human. What do we have here? The human male, by their biological standards, looked up at him with an expression that Vax couldn't quite read. He was wearing what appeared to be a flight suit with unfamiliar insignias, and despite being restrained, maintained a straight-backed military bearing that Vax found oddly familiar. Captain Jake Stone, sir, the human announced crisply, as if reporting to a superior officer. United Earth Defense Force. Vax's secondary eyes blinked in amusement. The creature was trying to be formal, how quaint. United Earth Defense Force, he repeated, making no attempt to hide the mockery in his tone. And what exactly does your force defend against? Solar flares? Asteroid impacts? The human's lips curved upward slightly. Among other things. Something about that smile made Vax's exoskeleton ripple with unease. Still, he dismissed the feeling. After all, what threat could this soft, scale-less creature possibly pose to the mighty Zylaxian Empire? Take it to holding cell 3, he ordered his guards. We'll deal with this, Captain Stone, after I finish my patrol reports. As they led the human away, Vax noticed something peculiar. The prisoner wasn't shuffling along in fear like most captured species. Instead, he walked with the measured stride of someone who was exactly where they planned to be. How odd! The interrogation chamber aboard the Crimson Scythe hummed with nervous energy as Captain Jake Stone sat calmly across from 3 of the Empire's most decorated military commanders. Commander Vax found himself increasingly irritated by the human's composure. You understand your situation? Yes, Grand Strategist Nexus Prime clicked her mandibles together, her iridescent carapace reflecting the harsh lighting. You are alone, surrounded by the mightiest fleet in 7 galaxies. Impressive. Stone nodded, studying the holographic star chart between them. Though your fleet formations could use some work. The room temperature dropped several degrees as all 3 commanders stared at him. Excuse me, Vax's voice carried dangerous undertones. Stone leaned forward, gesturing at the display. Look at your patrol patterns. You're leaving Sector 4-6 completely exposed every 3rd rotation. Any decent tactician could slip a strike force through that gap. Battlemaster Krull, who had remained silent until now, slammed his armored appendage on the table. Impossible. Our formations are based on 10,000 years of martial tradition. Exactly the problem, Stone replied, not even flinching at the outburst. You're so bound by tradition that you've become predictable. Watch. His fingers danced over the holographic controls, rearranging the fleet markers with surprising skill. Shift these 3 battle groups into an asymmetric pattern, Maintain your coverage while using 30% less fuel. The commanders exchanged glances. None would admit it, but the human suggestion was elegant. And how exactly, Vax asked carefully, does a primitive species like yours understand advanced fleet tactics? Stone's eyes sparkled with amusement. We might not have your technology, Commander, but humans have been studying warfare since we first picked up sticks and rocks. Sometimes the old principles work best. Nexus Prime leaned in, her scientific curiosity piqued. Tell me, Captain Stone, are you familiar with the siege of Carthax Prime? The one where your forces were trapped by the Rigellian armada. You lost 6 capital ships breaking that blockade. We lost 8, actually, she corrected, then paused. How did you know about that? I make it my business to study military history. Including yours, Stone tapped the star chart again. You could have saved those ships if you'd used the planet's magnetic field to mask your sensor signatures. Basic guerrilla tactics. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This human hadn't just been caught by chance, he'd been studying them, learning their strengths, their weaknesses, their history. Whispers began circulating through the ship over the next few days. The human prisoner who spoke of battles long past, the primitive who understood their technology with disturbing ease. Some crew members swore they saw him teaching junior officers advanced combat algorithms in the detention block. Even the typically stoic Vax found himself returning to speak with Stone, their conversations stretching for hours as they discussed everything from ancient battles to theoretical combat scenarios. The human's insights were unorthodox, but undeniably brilliant. Perhaps Nexus Prime suggested during a private meeting of the command staff, we should consider the tactical advantages of having such a unique perspective in our ranks. You cannot be serious, Krull protested. Give a primitive species access to our military secrets. He already understands more than he should, Vax pointed out. The question is, do we want that knowledge working for us or against us? Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with dozens of incoming vessels. Rigellian battle fleet, an officer shouted. They've found the gap in our patrol pattern. All eyes turned to the human cell on the security monitor, where Stone sat smiling, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Red emergency lights bathed the Crimson Side's bridge in an ominous glow as the Rigellian warships emerged from hyperspace. Commander Vax's exoskeleton shifted to battle-ready crimson as he assessed their dire situation. 37 enemy vessels, Lieutenant Krell reported, mandibles trembling. They've caught us in a perfect ambush position. Not perfect, Jake Stone's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned to see the human standing in the doorway, flanked by guards. Permission to approach the tactical display, Commander. Vax hesitated for precisely 2 seconds before nodding. Release him. The guards removed Stone's restraints as Battlemaster Krull bellowed in protest. This is madness. We cannot trust. Show me, Vax interrupted, ignoring Krull's outburst. Stone moved to the holographic display with practiced efficiency. The Rigellians think they have us trapped against the asteroid field, but they've made 3 critical mistakes. His fingers danced across the controls. First, their formation is too tight. Second, they're using predictable attack vectors. And third, he smiled, they don't know about the magnetic pulse cannon prototype you have in Cargo Bay 6. Nexus Prime's secondary eyes widened. How did you? Later, Stone cut her off. Right now, we need to split their formation. Commander, if you'll allow me. The bridge fell silent as all eyes turned to Vax. The fate of the Crimson Scythe and its 10,000 crew members hung on his next word. Proceed, Vax commanded. Stone's hands flew across the tactical controls. Reroute power from decks 12 through 15 to the engine cores. Launch debris from the maintenance bays on my mark. Lieutenant Krell, prepare to execute a reverse thrust spin on my signal. The crew jumped to obey, their natural instincts for hierarchy overriding any hesitation about taking orders from a human. Stone's voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had commanded troops in battle before. Rigellian ships entering weapons range, an officer announced. Perfect, Stone grinned. Now watch this. Launch debris. Thousands of metal fragments ejected from the Crimson Scythe's maintenance bays, creating a cloud of reflective particles between them and the enemy fleet. The debris will scatter their targeting sensors, Stone explained. Lieutenant Krell, Execute spin maneuver in 3, 2, 1 now. The massive warship performed a move that should have been impossible for a vessel its size, rotating backwards while maintaining its forward momentum. The Rigellian fleet's first volley passed harmlessly through the debris field, their sensors confused by thousands of small targets. Magnetic pulse cannon charged to 80%, Nexus Prime reported. Fire on my mark, Stone commanded. Target the center of their formation now. The prototype weapon discharged, sending a massive electromagnetic pulse through the debris field. The metal fragments amplified and scattered the pulse, creating a web of energy that washed over the enemy fleet. Ship after ship lost power, their systems overloaded by the unexpected attack. Hard burn toward the asteroid field, Stone ordered. Use their disabled ships as cover. The Crimson Scythe accelerated through the chaos, its massive bulk threading between powerless Rigellian vessels. By the time the enemy fleet reorganized, Vax's ship was safely positioned among the asteroids, using the magnetic interference to mask their signature just as Stone had suggested during his interrogation. Status report, Vax demanded. Minor hull damage to lower decks. No casualties, Krell's voice contained poorly concealed awe. Enemy fleet is in disarray. 17 ships completely disabled, others struggling to maintain formation. Stone studied the tactical display. They'll retreat within 3 minutes. Their command structure can't handle this level of chaos. True to his prediction, the Rigellian fleet began pulling back exactly 172 seconds later. The bridge erupted in celebrations, crew members chittering and clicking in relief and victory. Vax turned all 5 eyes to study the human before him. You knew about the prototype weapon. You anticipated this attack. You understood exactly how our ship would perform under those conditions. His voice carried a dangerous edge. Explain. Stone met his gaze steadily. I told you, Commander. I make it my business to study potential allies and enemies. Right now, you get to decide which category you fall into. Battlemaster Krull stepped forward, his earlier protests forgotten. The human fights with honor and cunning. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment. Indeed, Nexus Prime agreed. Such tactical brilliance should not be wasted in a holding cell. Vax's exoskeleton shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, royal purple, the color of respect. Captain Stone, I believe it's time we discussed your new role in my fleet. Jake Stone stood before the assembled officers of the 3rd Battle Fleet, his new Zylaxian combat armor gleaming under the chamber lights. The promotion ceremony had been his idea, a way to blend human military tradition with Zylaxian protocols. Commander Vax watched with approval as Stone handled the ritual with perfect precision. By the authority of the Supreme Command, Vax announced, his voice resonating through the chamber, I hereby promote Jake Stone to Fleet Tactician Prime. The assembled officers clicked their mandibles in the traditional salute. Stone returned the gesture, having practiced for weeks to get the proper resonance with his modified ceremonial plates. But not everyone celebrated. In the back of the chamber, a group of traditionalist officers led by Sub-Commander Rax buzzed with disapproval. The human corrupts our ways, Rax whispered to his companions. Look how he changes our sacred traditions. Stone heard every word. His augmented hearing implants, another gift from Nexus Prime, picked up conversations across the chamber. He made a mental note of the dissent while maintaining his ceremonial pose. Later, during combat drills, Stone introduced innovations that sent shockwaves through the fleet. He combined Zylaxian swarm tactics with human guerrilla warfare, creating hybrid strategies that consistently overwhelmed traditional defenses. Your wings must learn to think independently, Stone instructed a group of young officers. Rigid formation has its place, but adaptation wins battles. Lieutenant Krell, now his chief assistant, translated the human concepts into terms the Zylaxian warriors could understand. Like a hunting swarm adapting to prey movements, he explained. The younger officers embraced Stone's methods enthusiastically. Their practice runs showed remarkable improvement, much to the veterans' surprise. Even Sub-Commander Rax couldn't deny the results. Stone's influence spread beyond tactics. He worked with engineering crews, combining human ingenuity with Zylaxian technology. The mess hall began serving fusion cuisine after he convinced the nutritionists that variety improved crew performance. He even started a combat sports league that merged human martial arts with Zylaxian battle forms. Notice how he builds loyalty, Nexus Prime observed to Vax. The crew sees him as one of their own now. Most of them, Vax replied, watching Rax and his followers during a training session. The old guard resists change. The breakthrough came during an emergency response drill. Stone had reorganized the crew into smaller, more flexible teams, a controversial departure from traditional hierarchical response patterns. When a real reactor breach occurred mid-drill, his new system proved its worth. Cross-team response. Immediate deployment. Stone barked orders through the command network. Engineering Team Alpha to Deck 7, Beta to containment backup. Medical unit standby for radiation protocols. The crew moved with unprecedented efficiency. Even Rax's team found themselves naturally falling into the new patterns. The breach was contained in record time with 0 casualties. In the aftermath, Rax approached Stone in the command center. The chamber fell silent, anticipating confrontation. Instead, Rax performed the deep bow of warrior respect. "Your ways are different," human Rax announced formally, "but they keep our people alive. I withdraw my opposition." Stone returned the bow perfectly. "Your traditions give us strength, Sub-Commander. I only seek to add to them, not replace them." That evening, Stone stood on the observation deck, watching stars streak by. Commander Vax joined him, his exoskeleton glowing with pride colors. "You understand what you have accomplished?" Vax asked. "No outsider has ever earned the loyalty of a Zylaxian battle fleet." Stone smiled. "Just wait until they see what we do next." The war room, aboard the Crimson Scythe, crackled with tension as the holographic display showed hundreds of enemy vessels converging on the Zylaxian home system. The Rigellian armada had committed their entire fleet to this invasion. 2,300 warships, Stone announced, his voice cutting through the nervous chittering of assembled commanders, plus support vessels and planetary assault craft. "Impossible to defend against such numbers," Battlemaster Krull declared. "We must evacuate the Royal Clutch worlds." Commander Vax's exoskeleton had turned ash gray with worry. The Empire has never retreated from its core systems. Never. Stone stepped forward, manipulating the holographic display. "Who said anything about retreating?" His fingers traced lines through the star map. "Tell me, what do you know about the Battle of Thermopylae?" Nexus Prime tilted her head. "This is no time for history lessons, human." "Humor me," Stone pressed. 300 Spartan warriors held off a Persian army of over 100,000. Not because they were stronger, but because they chose their battlefield perfectly. He zoomed in on a particular sector of space. The Maelstrom Nebula. Highly charged gas clouds, magnetic interference, gravitational anomalies. Your ships can navigate it because they're biomechanical. Rigellian vessels, being purely mechanical, would be torn apart. Sub-Commander Rax clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You suggest we hide in the nebula?" No, Stone grinned. "I suggest we make them follow us into it." The chamber erupted in protests. Stone raised his voice above the chaos. "The Rigellians know our fleet protocols. They expect us to make a stand at the defense platforms. They expect a traditional Zylaxian last stand. So let's show them something they've never seen before." He pulled up technical schematics. "We modified the defense platforms to act as electromagnetic pulse generators, rig them to overload when the enemy fleet passes through. That disrupts their formation. Then, we trigger a cascade reaction in the nebula gases, creating a trap." Vax nodded slowly. "But they would never pursue us into the Maelstrom. They know its dangers." "They will if they think they've broken us," Stone countered. "We show weakness, make them believe they've shattered our defenses. Their commander will push for total victory. Pride and momentum will drive them right where we want them." "You want us to appear weak?" Battlemaster Krull's voice dripped with disgust. "Pretend to be cowards." Stone turned to face the massive alien warrior. "Tell me, Battlemaster, what is more important, appearing strong or achieving victory?" Silence fell over the chamber. Even the most traditional commanders couldn't argue with that logic. "The plan is sound," Nexus Prime finally spoke, "but timing would be critical. One miscalculation in the nebula." "Then we don't miscalculate," Stone said firmly. "I'll lead the bait force myself." Vax stepped forward. "You would risk your own life on this strategy." "A commander who won't risk himself shouldn't risk his troops," Stone replied. "Besides, I've studied human naval warfare in similar conditions. Hurricanes, typhoons, natural phenomena that change the course of battles. This is no different. The next hours were a blur of preparation. Stone worked with engineering teams to modify the defense platforms, drilled fleet commanders on the precise timing required, and coordinated with Nexus Prime to calculate the optimal nebula gas mixtures for maximum damage. As the enemy fleet approached, doubt began to spread through the ranks. The plan seemed too complex, too dependent on enemy behavior, too contrary to generations of Zylaxian military doctrine. "This is madness," one veteran commander growled during the final briefing. "We should face them in open battle, die with honor." Stone slammed his fist on the tactical display. "Honor doesn't protect your worlds. Honor doesn't save your people. You want to die gloriously? Fine, but I'm offering you a chance to win." The commander fell silent, mandibles clicking in grudging acceptance. As the massive Rigellian fleet appeared on long-range sensors, Commander Vax gathered his senior staff one last time. "This plan goes against everything we have ever been taught," he announced. "But I have seen this human snatch victory from certain defeat before. I trust him with the fate of our empire." He turned to Stone. "Fleet Tactician Prime, you have command of the operation." Stone nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Signal all ships. Operation Thermopylae begins now." The Crimson Scythe shuddered as another volley of Rigellian weapons fire slashed through space. Stone watched the tactical display with focused intensity as the massive enemy fleet pressed their advantage, exactly as planned. "Defense Platform Alpha reports critical damage," Lieutenant Krell announced. "Beta and Gamma showing similar stress patterns." "Perfect," Stone muttered. "Transmit the withdrawal signal. Make it look desperate." The Zylaxian fleet began its carefully choreographed retreat, leaving their defense platforms apparently crippled and sparking. The Rigellian fleet surged forward, their formation tightening as they sensed victory. "They are falling for it," Commander Vax observed from his command chair. "But our losses are not entirely staged. 3 destroyers gone, 2 cruisers crippled." Stone nodded grimly. "The best deception contains truth. Signal the defense platforms to begin power cascade in 30 seconds. The massive Rigellian armada pressed through the defensive line, their weapons blazing triumphantly. Suddenly, every defense platform simultaneously overloaded, releasing electromagnetic pulses that rippled through their tight formation. Ships collided as navigation systems failed, creating chaos in their neat battle lines. Now Stone commanded, "Full burn toward the Maelstrom. All ships execute pattern Omega." The Zylaxian fleet moved as one, their biomechanical ships flowing like a river of liquid metal toward the writhing nebula. The Rigellian fleet, disorganized but undaunted, followed close behind. "Enemy admiral signals for our surrender," Krell reported, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Send no reply," Stone ordered. "Let them think we are running blind in panic." The Maelstrom Nebula loomed before them, its purple-green gases swirling with lethal energy. The Zylaxian fleet split into predetermined groups, threading through safe corridors that their engineers had mapped weeks before. Rigellian fleet entering the nebula, Nexus Prime announced from her science station. "Their shields are already failing." Stone watched the enemy ships begin to break apart under the nebula's assault. "Activate the catalysts. All ships execute maneuver Thunderstrike." Precisely placed chemical charges detonated throughout the nebula, transforming the gas clouds into a firestorm of celestial proportions. The Zylaxian fleet rode the shockwave like surfers on a wave, their biomechanical hulls adapting to the chaos. The Rigellian fleet was not so fortunate. Ship after ship succumbed to the combined gravitational and electromagnetic forces. Those that tried to retreat found their escape routes cut off by secondary gas ignitions. "Enemy fleet is being torn apart," Krell reported, his voice filled with awe. 80% casualties in climbing. "Signal all ships," Stone commanded. "Execute killing stroke." The Zylaxian fleet emerged from the chaos in perfect attack formation, catching the remaining enemy vessels in a devastating crossfire. The battle was over in minutes. Commander Vax turned to Stone, his exoskeleton glowing with victory colors. "You turned our greatest natural hazard into our strongest weapon." "Sometimes," Stone replied with a slight smile, "the most dangerous ground is exactly where you need to be." The coronation chamber of the Zylaxian Empire pulsed with bioluminescent light as Jake Stone accepted the crystalline staff of Supreme Command. Below him, 10,000 warriors clicked their mandibles in salute, their exoskeletons shimmering with respect colors. "The first outsider to command our fleet's Emperor Zax proclaimed, the human who saved our worlds." Commander Vax stood proudly at attention, his former prisoner now his superior. Stone allowed himself a small smile as he raised the command staff, triggering a specific frequency in its crystal matrix. Instantly, every display in the chamber blazed to life. Thousands of ships materialized in Zylaxian space, their stealth fields dropping in perfect synchronization. Not primitive vessels, but advanced warships that made the Crimson Scythe look like a child's toy. "About that whole primitive species thing," Stone announced casually. "Turns out humans have a saying, the best way to understand an empire is from the inside." The chamber erupted in chaos as the aliens realized the truth. Their greatest military victory had been orchestrated by an infiltrator. Their savior was an advanced scout. Their new supreme commander had just completed the most brilliant conquest in galactic history without firing a single shot. Stone looked down at his former captors with genuine affection. "Now then, let's discuss Earth's terms for alliance. After all, we primitives do so love making new friends.